Welcome, everyone. This is the regular Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting of Richfield. It's being held via WebEx. It is April 19th, 2021, and it is 7:05 p.m. And so I'm going to call this meeting to order. And before we take attendance, I want to welcome our new commissioner, Commissioner Onesark. So thank you for being with us.
It's an honor. Thank you.
We're glad to have you with us. All right, so Administrative Assistant Dubois, if you could take the roll call, please.
Yes, thank you. Chair Supple?
Here.
Commissioner Onesark?
Here.
Commissioner Vries Daniels?
Here.
Commissioner Reagan Gonzalez?
Here.
Commissioner Sandal?
Here.
We have all members present. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the open forum. Would you be willing to restate for the public what they would need to do if they would like to participate?
Yes, thank you, Chair Supple. So for the members of the public, if you would like to participate in the open forum, you can do so live by calling 612-861-0651. As you call in, a moderator will assist you and send you into the meeting live. As always, you can always submit comments in advance to LDUBOIS@richfieldmn.gov, subject line HRA open forum.
Do we have anyone on the line right now?
We do not have any callers on the line at this moment.
All right, we can wait another minute to make sure, and then we'll proceed with the meeting. All right, do we have any callers?
Chair Supple, we do not have any callers.
All right, thank you. So we're going to move on to approval of the minutes of the Joint City Council and HRA work session of February 16th, 2021, the regular HRA meeting of February 16th, 2021, and the Joint City Council, HRA Planning Commission and Human Rights Commission work session of March 15th, 2021.
I'll move approval. Second.
All right, was that Commissioner Sandal that moved approval?
Yes.
All right, and we've had a second from Commissioner Reagan Gonzalez. Is there any discussion? All right, then administrative, oh, go ahead.
It was Commissioner Vries Daniels who seconded.
Oh, thank you.
Probably doesn't matter, but.
No, it's good to be accurate. Thank you for correcting me. All right, so thank you for noting that. And Administrative Assistant Dubois, would you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Chair Supple?
Yes.
Commissioner Onesark?
Yes.
Commissioner Vries Daniels? Commissioner Reagan Gonzalez?
Aye.
Commissioner Sandal?
Yes.
We have 5 yeses. Thank you.
Thank you. We've approved the minutes. Next is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll move approval. Sue Sandal.
I'll second Commissioner Vries Daniels.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to, moved by Commissioner Sandal and seconded by Commissioner Vries Daniels to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? All right, then we'll go ahead with the roll call. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Supple.
Aye.
Commissioner Onesark?
Aye.
Commissioner Vries Daniels?
Aye.
Commissioner Reagan Gonzalez?
Aye.
Commissioner Sandal?
Aye.
We have 5 ayes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the consent calendar. So I'm going to turn it over to Executive Director Stark. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Supple. The consent calendar contains separate items which would be acted upon by the HRA in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, all of the individual items have also been approved with no further discussion or action by the HRA. However, any HRA commissioner may request an item be removed from the consent calendar and placed on the regular agenda. Tonight, we do only have one item on the consent agenda. It's the consideration of an approval to revisions to the first-time homebuyer program guidelines. And with that, I would take any questions you might have.
Executive Director Stark, for the people that are watching this online, could you do the quick synopsis of what's been changed? I know there've been some modifications have been made.
Yeah, just give me 1 second to scroll to the right place on my screen.
Thank you so much.
Yep. First, I'll start with the reason we're contemplating this. The program was initiated just a couple of years ago in July of 2018. As we've discussed, Richfield's housing market continues to be very, very hot and very difficult for people to find homes in. Typically, there's bidding for a house before it even really enters the market, and many houses are selling for over and above their asking price. And as we've worked with first-time home buyers, we've seen again and again the challenges that they've had in getting a successful purchase offer on a house. So we're suggesting that the base loan amount be increased from $10,000 to $15,000 and allow eligible households to receive an additional $5,000 for a loan amount up to $20,000. This additional $5,000 has always been a possibility. So it's really just the base that's increasing. The other thing we're asking, currently, the guidelines state that under certain situations, the HRA executive director or myself may allow assistance in excess of the maximum in their discretion. Quite frankly, I don't feel comfortable with that amount of discretion. And so I was looking to put some parameters to that. And so we're suggesting that that be up to $5,000 additional dollars. And we give some examples of the kinds of situations under which I would grant such an increase. And these are real world examples, one of which is helping somebody get out of an unsafe environment. So again, we're just looking for an update to this. And if the Richfield housing market were to change and cool, we could always revisit this and come back and re-lower the amounts. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Vrees Daniels.
I did have a question reading through, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, but on page 7, under eligibility requirements, it says to be eligible to participate in the program and receive a loan up to $20,000, the applicant must meet the following requirements, and then it goes through requirements. And then on page 9, it says applicants who meet one of the following criteria, in addition to meeting the requirements listed previously, will be eligible for a total loan up to $15,000. Should those numbers be flip-flop? Should it be 15 and then eligible up to 20, or am I thinking about that wrong?
And I don't know if Housing Manager Urban is available. Julie has kind of more day-to-day familiarity with the program than I do, and she might be able to answer that.
So Aaron, could you, sorry, Commissioner Vrees Daniels, can you tell me what was the second reference you were making? I see your first one on
At
page 7.
Yep, at the top of 9 then.
Oh, thank you. I missed that.
So 7 says like you can receive up to 20,000, and then it goes through a bunch of criteria. And then at page 9, it says on top of that criteria, if you meet this additional, it'll be 15. And it just seems like those numbers should be flip-flopped.
Yeah, no, I think it should just be, it should have been updated as well.
Okay. Because am I thinking about this right, that the new baseline is 15,000. If you meet any of these extra 3 criteria, you can have up to 20?
Right. Yep. So you're
Okay.
right. It should be 15 there on page 7 and then 20 on the other page.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
Good.
for catching that. think when I reviewed it, I focused on the big red section and didn't catch those other areas. So thank you.
Are there any additional questions, or would someone like to move the consent calendar with that correction? I believe Commissioner Sandal was trying to do that, but you're muted.
Now I will move the consent calendar with the correction.
Second,
Commissioner
Commissioner
Sandal.
Reese Second, Commissioner Reese Daniels.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar with that correction. Any further discussion? All right, then we will call the roll to take the vote. Administrative Assistant Dubois?
Thank you. Chair Supple,
Aye.
Commissioner Onestorg,
Aye.
Commissioner Vrees Daniels,
Aye.
Commissioner Reagan Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandal.
Aye.
We have 5 ayes. Thank you.
All right, and I also want to thank the staff for all the work they've put into that program. When we had the workshop on the Just Deeds, it really talked about why this is the importance of this program, and it's good that we're continuing to try and improve it and add to it. Next, we're going to be moving on to another housing policy. So we're going to consider the adoption of a resolution approving revisions to the Inclusionary Affordable Housing Policy. Executive Director Stark.
Thank you, Chair Supple. I'm going to pass this along to Housing Manager Urban. I would like to maybe thank Housing Manager Urban. She's been very responsive to folks and questions they've had, suggestions they've had, and I think has done just an outstanding job of putting together some revisions to our inclusionary affordable housing policy, and I hope that when she's done going through with this, you will agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Supple and Commissioners. So back in 2018, you adopted our Inclusionary Affordable Housing Policy, requiring all new development receiving financial assistance from the HRA include affordable housing. Specifically, the policy requires all housing developers receiving public subsidy to either make at least 20% of all housing units be affordable to either renters earning less than 60% of the area median income or owners earning less than 115% of the AMI. Or they need to pledge 15% of the net present value of the subsidy they receive to the Richfield Housing and Redevelopment Fund. So policymakers reviewed the policy in 2019, again in September 2020, and in February of 2021. Staff was directed at those work sessions to prepare several revisions relating specifically to the rental housing component and relating to deeper affordability. How can we encourage deeper affordability? Looking at the length of the affordability term, how to encourage larger units, and to incorporate accessible housing requirements into the policy as well. So specifically, the first change is in order to provide more deeply affordable units, we understand that that increases costs. The deeper the affordability, the more expensive it is to provide and to develop. So to balance those increased costs, the proposed revisions would allow for fewer units at the deeper the affordability that is provided. So we would continue to require either 20% at 60% AMI, or if a development was going to provide units at 50% of the AMI, they would provide 15% of the units. And then finally, if a development were going to provide 30% AMI units, they would just have to provide 10% of the total units at that income level. And then we also made similar changes to the owner occupied requirements. So 20% at 115%, 15% at 100% AMI, and 10% at 80% AMI. And then we would also allow a mix of affordability. So if they wanted to have some 60 and some 30, we would negotiate a mix of those unit counts. So the proposed revision would also require that the affordable units be provided in a mix of bedroom sizes that is similar to the mix provided by the development as a whole. However, in recognition of the greater need we have for larger units and the additional cost to provide those larger units, we've also written into the policy some flexibility that the total number of units might be adjusted if, for example, a development were providing more 2 and 3 bedroom units. The recent Enclave development is one example of that. We allowed fewer units because they were providing them in 2 bedrooms. A third requirement in the new policy is for accessible units. So this is a new requirement. And the way we structured that is that either 5% of the units would need to be what's called type A units, or 3% of the units would have to be what's considered fully accessible. And again, we would require that in a mix of bedroom sizes. The affordability requirement would also apply to the accessible units. However, we do allow for those 2% type A units that are required by the building code to be non-affordable. And the purpose of that is to not, we don't want to end up with no accessible units in the city that aren't available to anyone who has a need, regardless of their income level. And then the final thing that we add there is that all of the either type A units or the accessible units would need to include roll-in showers. That is something that we've heard from folks that is really an important piece. And then finally, a version you were sent today with some revisions, because there was some confusion over exactly what was being required with these units, is that we also added a requirement for grab bars. Although we did allow for, if a developer insisted, that wasn't something they wanted to provide, that'd be fine as long as they would agree to pay for that installation upon request from a future tenant. The fourth area where we made revisions is in the area of the in lieu fee. So currently the developer could opt not to provide affordable units, but instead pay a fee to our Housing and Redevelopment Fund. We added a requirement if a developer said, well, we don't want to provide those additional accessible units, that'd be fine, but then you need to also give us a cash payment of $5,000 per unit to our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And the idea of that is that we could then use those funds to create a program of some sort to help folks create accessible units or to create accessible units elsewhere in another development. So the fifth item or change that we made is that the policy currently requires an affordability term equal to the length of the subsidy being provided, or a minimum of 10 years, whichever is greater. Based on feedback from policymakers, we've increased that minimum to 15 years. Next, the current policy requires non-housing developments to replace any affordable housing that's being removed. The proposed revision would expand that requirement to encompass housing developments as well. So any development that's removing affordable housing would be required to replace that affordable housing. Finally, we wanted to add flexibility for smaller projects. And the way we ended up wording that was that if a project is between 5 and 19 units, the exceptions could be made to the different policies by the community development director. And that's in recognition of the financial and administrative burden that policy requirements, especially our increased policy requirements, could have on smaller developments, which are very challenging in and of themselves. So we wanted to allow some flexibility. There's also just a few minor wording updates to the policy. And after that, I guess if you have any questions, I can go into those changes more deeply or answer any questions.
So Housing Manager Urban, could you go through the 1A1? So it's 60% of AMI has to be 20%, that little table there. Could you reread that for us, please?
Sure. So it gets a little confusing. So if a developer is going to provide units at 60% of the area median income, then 20% of the total units need to be affordable at that level. If they're going to provide those units at 50% of the area median income, then they just need to provide 15% of the total units at that income level. And then finally, if they're going to provide 30% units, 10% of the total units would need to be affordable at that level.
And so I don't mean to interrupt, but am I the only one that's seeing different numbers on the posted agenda?
That was why I asked the question, because I think it got modified and it didn't get changed. So I wanted to clarify what we were talking about.
Well,
So I'm
so
not
I
sure
have something
whether,
different than you do?
yeah, yep. And I'm not sure whether the numbers that Housing Manager Urban is stating are what we're intending or what's on the posted agenda is.
So I'm sorry, I don't see where would I find the posted agenda in the website?
Yeah. While Ms. Urban's looking at that, I would add, Latanya, Mr. Boss says the posted agenda is the same as what I sent out today.
I would say that I just grabbed the posted agenda and it's matching what Urban is saying. So
Yeah. Me too.
Hmm.
Okay, and I'm fine with going with 2015 and 10 as long as we all know we're saying that. I think for some reason there's two different versions here, and if we're going with 2015 and 10 for both the rental and the owner occupied, I'm fine with that, just so we're all clear that we're all saying the same thing.
I have
So-
two, yeah, Sue Sandal, I have two sets of numbers. I think the first set came out on Thursday and maybe the second one came out later. Is that what it was?
You
I
know,
believe what was emailed to us was the original set of numbers, and a new set has been posted that we weren't aware of. Some of us weren't aware of. So 2015 and 10, is that where we're going with?
I really apologize. I do not understand where different numbers. You know, I think I played around with different formulas.
All right, so your intent is to have it at 2015 and 10 for both of these, correct? 2015 and 10?
Just so Julie can hear it, because maybe you're not seeing it, the other version shows 20, 10, and 5. While Julie pondering that, let me just add that whatever you approve tonight is also going to be going before the EDA later tonight, and then to the City Council at its next meeting. If either of those bodies were to approve something different, we would likely come back to you at next month's meeting to share those differences with you and see if you wanted the HRA policy to change. My hope is that all three bodies would have policies that mirrored one another.
Would be good.
All right. Did you want to
was-
comment? Go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead with your comments. I was just looking for a comparison that I have from other cities.
Well,
That's where
maybe,
it was
well,
coming from.
While
We can
Julie's
talk
doing-
about other parts. Yeah, go ahead. Executive Director Stark, did you have a suggestion for how to proceed?
no, I was going to suggest exactly what you were saying.
All right, so if there are other things that people want to talk about, Commissioner Vries Daniels, go ahead.
yeah, I have a question about the grab bars. So I appreciate the flexibility and also all the work that you have done in there as well. But how do people know that they can request grab bars? I'm a little worried that it's just going to get lost in the process as people are moving and then want to move into this place. How do we make sure that they know they can request grab bars if we aren't putting it as a requirement?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Vries Daniels. First, let me preface it by saying why we put that flexibility in. We are hearing from developers that oftentimes when they have the grab bars in, that they're approached by the initial tenant saying, you know, is there any way these can be removed? You know, they provide, there's some sort of impediment to me Perhaps the person that ends up in the unit isn't in need of that particular type of accessible infrastructure. And so that's the reason we put that in. Your comment is a very good one, though. I will say we were paid a great compliment this weekend. We were told that from a Met Council representative that out of 100 cities they work with, that the city of Richfield is doing more with accessibility than any of those other 100 communities. But it's a growth thing for us. It's something we're evolving into. I'm hoping that we will have a page on our webpage that's devoted to accessibility at some point in time, and that anybody who is in need of accessible resources or have a neighbor or a friend or loved one that this would be kind of a bit of a one-stop shop for them for city services, and it would include that kind of information. So that would be one method. And I would say, as we're talking to developers, they are getting where we're coming from on accessibility, and I feel like we're converting some folks, and hopefully these developers will want to continue to be part of the solution.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. While we're talking about grab bars, it's my understanding that the requirement will be for the type A units. Is there a reason they weren't put for the accessible units? Are they already required by state law there, or?
Yes, they are. They're already required. But we did add a clarification on the roll-in shower because it's a very complicated code and there are some exceptions and if then, and so we just added roll-in shower behind accessibility just to make it very clear, because we don't want we wanted it to be clear. But with grab bars, it is clear that they are required.
All right, thank you so much, because we did hear that from a lot of residents that were giving feedback that they wanted the roll-in showers. Are you prepared to talk about the earlier thing?
Yes, I am so sorry. I don't know what. I went back to my chart where I compared cost, and yes, let's go with the 20, the 15, and the 10. Yes.
All right. Well, I would think that would probably be something that many people that have been writing to us would be happy with. So if it's at 20, 15, and 10 for rental and 20 and 15 and 10 for owner occupied.
I think as we've discussed, it's still going to be a challenge to get to those 30% AMI units. It's just a significant cost, but and then also if they do a housing TIF district, there's not a lot of incentive to do that, but we want it in our policy so that we can encourage it as much as possible, especially if resources did become available to help us get to 30%.
All right, are there other questions or comments? All right, Commissioner Onisar, go ahead.
I had a question about the roll-in showers percentage. What were those numbers again? Was it 5% of all the development or 3%?
So the way I'm proposing is that it would be, if they were going to do type A units, they would have to provide 5% of total units would have to be type A with a roll-in shower. Currently, the code requires 2% type A with one unit being a roll-in shower. Unless there's a certain number of units, then another roll-in shower is required. Again, there's all those exceptions. But if they were going to provide fully accessible units, then they would only have to do 3%. But again, we would expect them to have the roll-in shower.
Thank you.
All right, other questions? While people are pondering it, could you tell us why there's the difference between the 5% and the 3%? What's the rationale behind that?
Well, it's an incentive to offer more fully accessible to get to the 3%. There's a different cost. There's different sizes of turning, different spacing requirements. So the accessible is harder to achieve, but so it's sort of an incentive. Okay, you can provide fewer of them if you go the extra mile and do the extra space and the grab bars. So partly responding to your requests in the past to make it incentive based, to have some carrots as well as sticks, and giving some flexibility.
All right, other questions, comments, clarifications?
Chair Supple, I have one question.
All right, go ahead, Commissioner Regan Gonzalez. Thank you.
We're switching today, Commissioner Reese Daniels. I've done that before at a council meeting, yes. So can you just explain, so we did get letters from community and there was kind of additional conversation around the 5% type A units and then the 3. I know Chair Supple just asked about the difference. The letters that we've gotten from folks are advocating for all 5% type A units versus the 3% accessible units with roll-in showers. Can you just talk a little bit about that? Why the second split, or the split between the two versus the 5% roll-in shower option?
So the way it's written, everything would require a roll-in shower. So type A is accessible ready. So the walls are built to accommodate grab bars to be put in later. They have some of the same clearance. They have the doorways that are wide enough. A fully accessible unit is going to have cabinets removed from under the sinks. A type A unit has to design it so it could be removed or could be put back in. So a type A unit could be used by someone who isn't in a wheelchair or not. So it has a little bit more flexibility. So that might be appealing to a developer. The fully accessible is what we hear from the community that, really want to see as well. I'm basing some of it based on the data. Around 5% of folks in Ridgefield have ambulatory disabilities or challenges. And about half of those, a little more than half, are folks over 65. So in theory are being served in senior buildings, which have their own accessibility requirements. So I was looking also at the numbers to sort of look at need that way. 5% type A is a requirement from HUD financing. There's also a similar requirement for tax credit housing. So it's a similar standard that's out there. And so to adopt something that's not unexpected was sort of the other rationale. And again, allowing the slight reduction if they were going to do fully accessible is just an incentive to say, oh, maybe they'll go that route. And they could also do a combination. And we can also, work with developers one-on-one. In the case of the Rowan Apartments or the Henley 2 at 64th and Lindale, we required him to do one fully accessible unit. He ended up making both of his type A required units fully accessible. So there's some flexibility there in working with developers on an individual basis. John, did you have something to add to that?
Well, I just wanted to acknowledge that, I do believe we are developing some expertise in accessible housing, but we're certainly not experts. We have gotten a great deal of education from RDAP and from other folks in the community that do know more about accessibility than we do. So, to the 8 jury commissioners and to the general public listening, we're certainly open to learning more about accessible needs and continuing to develop our expertise. And so we're telling you everything we know to the best of our knowledge.
Thank you. Commissioner Regan Gonzalez, did you have any further follow-up questions?
No, thank you.
I had a question then, Executive Director Stark. You mentioned about putting some information on our websites. One of the community members mentioned that sometimes we have units that are accessible, but it's not advertised to anyone. Is there any way we can facilitate people to find those accessible units, or is that something that is on the developer?
I think that's one of the challenges we've discussed quite a bit, is that first of all, when a new complex is built, and let's say they have, 95 non-accessible units and 5 accessible units, but at the initial lease up, at that point in time, there are 99 applicants for spaces that are not in need of accessible spaces and one who is. Then those units get leased up to people that are not in need of an accessible space. And that's a challenge we want to try to find a solution for. I don't know that we have one yet. We've talked about adding, and some of these things, it's, we have good policy ideas until we get to the implementation and execution end of it. But one of the things we'd like to work on is that, let's say that that case had occurred and somebody not in need of an accessible unit ended up in one, and at some later point in time, a unit opens up, to give that tenant some incentive to move out of their accessible unit and into a non-accessible unit. I know that's not the right wording, but to free that up. That's one of the things we've talked about. And another is exactly what you mentioned, trying to find a way to provide information to the public. So we know it's an issue. I don't know that we have a solution, but I do know that we're committed to continue to explore this.
So right now what we do is we refer them to Housing Link, and we encourage them to sign up with Housing Link, which is a source that people can go to look for available affordable housing as well as accessible housing. But I think, as Director Stark is suggesting, we need to expand on that. And I think the idea would be to perhaps create a handout that we would provide to property managers, that this is how you can facilitate that. So we're looking for also partners in the disability service community to help us with that piece. And it's on the list of things that we're working on.
Further questions, comments? Are we at this point feeling comfortable to vote?
I'll make a motion to approve with the percentage of units at 20, 15, and 10 for both rental and owner occupied.
I'll second the motion. Commissioner Regan Gonzalez.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner Vries Daniels and seconded by Commissioner Rica Gonzalez to approve the most recently posted iteration of the inclusionary housing policy, which has 20%, 15%, and 10% for the affordability levels for both rental and owner occupied. Is it your intention also to go with the roll-in showers and the grab bar changes as well?
Yes, that was my intention.
And also Commissioner Regan Gonzalez, you're agreeable to that as well? All right, so now that we're clear on what we're voting on, are there any further comments or questions? I did want to say that I appreciated that you extended the window from 10 to 15 years so that we have it, so it's affordable for a longer period of time. So that, because I know before that, that duration seemed like it was very short. And so switching it to 15 is something that I think is good. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Regan Gonzalez.
I just remember working on this from the beginning, and I am so happy to see the progress that we've made. And I know since the beginning, we always said this is going to be a living document and we'll see how it goes and constantly update it. And we have been doing that. And I just am very, very proud of how far it's come and the work that we've done. And that's a huge in part to our city staff. And we've also had a lot of support and engagement on the inclusionary housing policy from the community as well from the beginning. So I'm very proud of this work.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? All right, then here, seeing no hands, Administrative Assistant Dubois, could you please call for the roll or the vote?
Yes, thank you. Chair Supple,
Aye.
Commissioner Onasorg,
Aye.
Commissioner Vries Daniels,
Aye.
Commissioner Regan Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandal.
Aye.
We have 5 ayes. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to echo what Commissioner Regan Gonzalez said about thanking the community and the staff and everybody that's been part of this, because it really has been an all hands on deck and everyone working together on it. So thank you. Next, we have HRA discussion items. Are there any items that anyone would like to bring up?
I
think we've one
we have
more.
an actual agenda item.
Whoops, did I miss one? Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Thank you for catching that. So let's back up to item 5 and do consideration of a resolution authorizing staff to take steps to discharge discriminatory covenants from Housing and Redevelopment Authority owned property. So go ahead, Executive Director Stark.
Oh, thank you. And while I have the floor, I'm just going to say that I love the community of Richfield. I love working for the Richfield and the Richfield HRA. And this is one of the reasons. I do believe that we are all collectively committed to overcoming systemic racism that we know exists in our country and in our community. And I'm very happy that this is one step in our progress. We have many, many steps to go, but we're committed to the journey. With that, I would pass this over to Housing Manager Urban, who, along with Assistant Community Development Director Melissa Pellman, have worked very hard on this step. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stark, Chair Supple, members of the commission. So the city, as many of you know, has joined the Just Deeds project. Just Deeds is a coalition of organizations whose mission it is to acknowledge, educate, and help to address systemic racism in housing in Minnesota. Coalition members provide free help to homeowners to find and discharge discriminatory covenants from property titles. Participating cities, which the city of Richfield now is, agree to raise awareness of the inequities caused by these racist tools, renounce the covenants on city-owned properties, and assist residents in discharging covenants on their properties. The racial or discriminatory covenants were a common tool used from the early 1900s until the 1960s to prevent Black, Indigenous, people of color, and non-Christians from buying property and living in residential neighborhoods across the country, including in the city of Richfield. Property deed language commonly stated, "No person of any race other than the Caucasian race shall use or occupy any building on any lot, except that this covenant shall not prevent occupancy by domestic servants of a different race domiciled with an owner or tenant." While these covenants were unequivocally deemed illegal with the passage of the Fair Housing Act in 1968, this discriminatory practice had a far-reaching impact on the development of the Twin Cities and communities of color, resulting in racially segregated communities and creating severe inequities between white and BIPOC communities still felt today. Using data collected by the Mapping Prejudice Project, which is out of the University of Minnesota, a map of the racial covenants that exist in Richfield has been created and it was attached to your staff report. There are unfortunately 3,714 parcels in the city that contain some form of racial covenant on the property deed. Included in that list are 3 parcels that are owned by the HRA. The properties include 6839 Cedar Avenue South, 7700 Pillsbury Avenue, also known as the City Garage South or former garage site, and 6321 Penn Avenue South. So action was taken by the state legislature back in 2019 that has made it possible for property owners to formally discharge the covenant on their property title. The discharge does not remove the language, but instead acknowledges it along with its harmful intent and then formally renounces it as a racist tool. So staff is seeking authorization from the HRA tonight to formally discharge the racial covenants from the HRA's 3 properties. We would also review titles of any future acquisitions and discharge those covenants at the time of purchase. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? I did have one question. This is specific to HRA-owned property. Is a similar item going to come before the city council for city-owned property?
It is, and we may do it in a couple of different phases because several of them are parks. And I know that Director Markle would like to be part of that and just raising awareness of what it means to have said, you know, our parks weren't welcome for everyone. And so I think we might pay special attention to those. And then the other properties that are involved are mostly right-of-way properties. But so yes, that'll be coming before the council.
Are there any other comments or questions? Commissioner Freeze Daniels?
Yes, thank you for this. And I have already noticed on the website, it's up, allowing residents to put their information in to take this down. I really appreciate that. What sort of outreach are we doing for residents as well as other commercial properties outside of the HRA and city owned?
Yeah, so we actually have quite a team of different staff people. We have housing staff and inspection staff. Let me think now. Planning staff. We've got Commissioner Markle, communications staff, a firefighter who has signed up to join us in our efforts. And so we've met as a team just once to talk about, you know, what are we going to do? And we'll be working on a communications plan to get that out there through social media. It's up on the website. I think we also want to do some good engagement activities, especially once people are vaccinated and feel safer going to the farmer's market and tabling, for example. When Penn Fest comes back, tabling there and inviting members of the community to be part of that as well. The Human Rights Commission expressed a letter of support to the council, urging them to become a participating city. So we envision engaging them as well. We're working on a standard presentation, and then we'll be offering sort of what we call train the trainer. So training people in on giving those presentations. So maybe, you know, if you're a member of a church community, maybe you want to give a presentation there to spread the word. Or we also have some ideas of perhaps working with the schools, and you know, maybe we can engage a high school class in this topic, or other community organizations. So we have sort of a whole bunch of different ideas right now. What we wanted to do first was get the council to pass the resolution, which happened last week. And then we're meeting with, it's the Golden Valley city attorney is a big leader in the Just Eats project. And she reached out last week that, okay, we got to get set up with our volunteer attorneys so that people can get that. So right now we had at least 10 people sign up after the council meeting. And I forgot to check if there were more since then, but right now the answer is, okay, we'll get to you in a couple of weeks. So we're not quite ready yet. So once we are, then we see this education stuff happening over time. It's not going to necessarily happen immediately. But yeah, there's lots of opportunities. Oh, I'm sorry. I just got a text from Nellie. 27 people have signed up so far. So I'm not going to do the math in my head, but there's still quite a few to go. But yeah, so anyway, if you have ideas or thoughts or want to be more involved and engaged in that, just let us know. We're happy to do that. And just it's really yeah, it's just a great project that can involve a lot of folks, and just really, while it's symbolic, it's a great way to raise awareness. It's just such a clear example of where policies in various organizations and as well as the government really just led to these really patterns that you know are pervade and persist today, and that, you know, we need to say no, it's not okay, and we need to do things differently, like create our first-time homebuyer program and target it at underserved populations, folks who haven't had an opportunity at homeownership. And it's really spreading. The city of Woodbury has recently adopted a first-time homebuyer program that's specific to first-generation homeowners, you know, really trying to target folks who haven't had those opportunities. And so I think it's a really great project from that perspective as well, not just that it can be something we can do here in Richfield, but that it's really reaching out into the suburbs and other places that maybe are less aware of racial issues or haven't traditionally addressed them. Sorry, I get passionate about this topic more than you wanted to know.
No, it's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional questions or comments? Commissioner Regan Gonzalez, go ahead.
Thank you. I had shared some similar comments at this, not at the study session, at the last meeting, at the council meeting regarding this. And I just also think it's a really great opportunity to look at how we talk about the existing work that we're doing around community planning, community development, and transportation in general, and how we build out our community and our city. Because I think that the community development department, but actually public works as well. So many of our departments have been doing this type of work for so long, and really making sure that we're accessible, multicultural, and a place that everybody can call home. And I do think that that's, you know, the work of really breaking these covenants apart and how they're carried out still today, even though they don't, you know, they're technically, you know, there's technically still exist, but they have influenced where our residents live and who's in our community and the access to opportunities we have. So there's examples. I'm just thinking of one of, you know, the biggest wins that I feel like I can say I've been a part of, and that was with our public works department and fighting and saying with the 494 and 35W project, please go back and look at this whole entire project, which is only done once in a generation. That is the most trafficked corridor in the state of Minnesota adjacent to our community. Go back and look at it with an equity angle. And because of that, they decided to put a pedestrian bridge over Chicago Avenue, which is huge to so many of our Richfield residents living in East Richfield. And, you know, saying, please go back and consider where there is the largest equity impacts and where there are the most traffic considerations and accidents, not just west of the interchange, but east as well. And that, again, had a huge impact. But every single decision we make with our planning and development is really helping advance more racial equity. So I just think that it's also an opportunity to lift up really great things that we have been doing for many years as well. So there's a lot of new initiatives, but there's also an opportunity to talk about what we've been doing for a long time. So that's all, and I'm very excited for this.
Thank you. Are there other comments, questions? If not, I wanted to add something that came up at the Human Rights Commission. There was a different speaker that was talking about wanting to make sure that we welcome new residents and had some different ideas. And in the course of that discussion, we had also been talking about the Just Eats project. And so the question was asked, could there be some kind of a thing when there's a real estate transaction that people are notified whether or not there is one of these covenants on their property so that they know that there is an option to get rid of it?
Yes, thank you. That is another thought that we've talked about, at a minimum, making it part of our point of sale, you know, having it an info piece when you get a point of sale inspection. Our first time homebuyer program, making it a piece that we hand out there. I'm not sure if we're doing new homeowner packets right now, but that would be another opportunity, you know, to put in there. But yes, so thank you for that reminder that that's another avenue for that. We'll also be mentioning at our realtor workshop next month, and although realtors are a part of that Just Eats coalition as well, so but we'll help to spread the word to them as also.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions? If not, would someone like to move the resolution?
I'll move that we adopt a resolution condemning the use of discriminatory covenants and authorizing staff to discharge discriminatory covenants on all existing and future housing and redevelopment authority-owned property. Sue Sandal.
I'll second Commissioner Vries Daniels.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner Sandal and seconded by Commissioner Vries Daniels to approve or to adopt the resolution. Are there any further comments? All right, hearing none. Administrative Assistant Dubois, would you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Chair Supple,
Aye.
Commissioner Onasorg,
Aye.
Commissioner Vries Daniels,
Aye.
Commissioner Regan Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandal.
Aye.
We have 5 ayes. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you to staff for all the work that you've put into bringing this forward and making us aware of it. We really appreciate it. All right, now, I don't think I've forgotten anything this time. We'll move on to HRA discussion items. Does anyone like to add anything?
Mary, I think you're muted.
Sorry. I was just checking because I can only see half of the commissioners at the same time, but I'm not seeing any hands. So we'll move on to the executive director's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Supple. Just giving you a couple of updates. State Representative Michael Howard and Senator Melissa Halverson Wickland introduced special legislation that would allow us to transfer pooled tax increment financing into our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We can do it now, but in very limited ways because it's subject to restrictions of redevelopment TIF districts. So Mayor Regan Gonzalez and Housing Manager Julie Urban testified before House and Senate property tax committees back in March. The legislation did make it into the House omnibus tax bill, but not into the Senate's. It is still possible that it could get included in the overall tax bill through conference committee work, and we will keep you updated on that. And then our emergency rental assistance program, the state's program is expected to open up at any time. There's a website called Rent Help MN. So it's all one word, Rent Help MN, where people can get more information and find out what kind of documentation they'll need to provide. VEAP continues to provide assistance in the meantime using county HRA and their own funds. HRA funds did help them to fill in gaps and help with their administrative costs. And I know that they're very thankful for that. And the money did find good use. So thank you. And that concludes my report.
Did anyone have any follow-up questions for Executive Director Stark? All right, then thank you for that report, and we'll move on to claims.
I'll move claims, Commissioner Vries Daniels.
Second, Commissioner Regan Gonzalez.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner Vries Daniels and seconded by Commissioner Regan Gonzalez to approve the claims. Are there any questions or comments? If not, we will put the matter before the HRA for a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Supple,
Aye.
Commissioner Onasorg,
Aye.
Commissioner Vries Daniels,
Aye.
Commissioner Regan Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandal.
Aye.
We have 5 ayes. Thank you.
Thank you. There has been a lot packed into this agenda, so thank you all. And we stand adjourned, and in about a minute, we will convene the Economic Development Authority meeting. Thank you.
We stay here, right?
Oh, I hope so. I get lost when I get at the end of a meeting.
Yes, we stay here.
All right, and so is the recording continuing so we could just go right into the next meeting?
That is correct. Yes.
All right, well then I'm going to call to order the Economic Development Authority meeting, which is a virtual meeting held via WebEx on April 19th, 2021. It is 8:04 p.m. and our first order of business would be to take attendance. Thank you.
Thank you. President Supple,
Here.
Commissioner Onasorg,
Here.
Commissioner Vries Daniels,
Here.
Commissioner Regan Gonzalez,
Here.
Commissioner Sandal.
Here.
We have all members present. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we again have an open forum, and I believe the phone number to call in is 861-0651. And there's a moderator available, so we'll pause and wait to see if anyone wants to call. Administrative Assistant Dubois, is there anyone on the line?
President Supple, we do not have any callers.
All right, thank you. Then we'll move on to approval of the minutes of the regular Economic Development Authority meeting of January 19th, 2021.
I move approval. Sue Sandahl, Commissioner.
Second, Commissioner Regan Gonzalez.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Sandal and seconded by Commissioner Rica Gonzalez to approve the minutes. Are there any corrections or questions? Hearing none, Administrative Assistant Dubois, could you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. President Supple,
Aye.
Commissioner Onasorg,
Aye.
Commissioner Vries Daniels,
Aye.
Commissioner Regan Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandal.
Aye.
We have 5 ayes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to approval of the agenda.
I move the approval of the agenda. Commissioner Sandahl.
Second, Commissioner Regan Gonzalez.
Thank you. So it's been moved by Commissioner Sandal and seconded by Commissioner Rica Gonzalez to approve the agenda. Are there any modifications or changes? All right, hearing none, could you please call the roll? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. President Supple,
Aye.
Commissioner Onasorg,
Aye.
Commissioner Vries Daniels,
Aye.
Commissioner Regan Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandal.
Aye.
We have 5 ayes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So our next item of business is to consider the adoption of a resolution approving revisions to the Inclusionary Affordable Housing Policy. Executive Director Stark.
Thank you, Chair Supple. This is very similar. It's actually exactly the same as the item that was just considered by the Housing and Redevelopment Authority earlier this evening. I would note that again, there was it looks like there was confusion in posting the documents. The resolution contains the correct percentages being, give me a second, being 20, 15, and 10. The attachment, however, which is the which includes some of the strike throughs and additions, is an incorrect number. So whoever makes the motion should note that. We have a policy amongst staff that when this kind of a mistake is made, somebody owes treats. So I will tell you that next time we are meeting in person, I'll bring some cookies for everyone. And it's at your discretion whether you'd like us to read through the staff report again, or since we had just done that at the HRA meeting, if you'd like an abbreviated version. And with that, I would take any questions.
Without objection, are people okay with the abbreviated version? All right, I'm seeing thumbs up from several commissioners. So go ahead with the abbreviated version.
And Housing Manager Urban, if you would, please.
Sure, thank you, Director Stark, Chair Supple, members of the President Supple, members of the EDA. As we discussed at the HRA meeting back in 2018, you approved an inclusionary housing policy, and that was basically requires that a development receiving any sort of assistance from the EDA, which is a rare occurrence, but might happen in the future. So we felt the need for you to adopt a policy, but basically any development receiving assistance from you needs to provide affordable housing, 20% of the units at 60% of the area median income, or provide a fee in lieu of that. And we've made several changes following several work sessions relating to trying to encourage deeper affordability and larger bedroom sizes, and added accessibility requirements, and lengthened the term, the minimum term. So with that, I guess I wouldn't go through the specifics again unless you would like me to, but they're laid out in the staff report and we can continue to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any additional questions? Okay, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Sue Sandall, Commissioner. I'm going to move that we adopt the resolution approving revisions to the inclusionary affordable housing policy with the percentage numbers as set forth on the front page of 20%, 15%, and 10% in both categories.
Second,
All right.
Commissioner Regan-Gonzalez.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner Sandal and seconded by Commissioner Regan-Gonzalez to approve the revisions to the inclusionary housing policy as stated. Are there any further questions? All right, and just to note, I believe Executive Director Stark said that this would be the same thing we voted on for the HRA. So at this point, they're compatible, so there won't need to come back to any of the meetings at this point. We'll see what happens at the City Council. All right, any other questions? All right, Administrative Assistant Dubois, could you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. President Supple,
Aye.
Commissioner Onasorg,
Aye.
Commissioner Vries Daniels,
Aye.
Commissioner Regan-Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandal. We have 5 ayes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to move on to EDA discussion items. Are there any items that anyone would like to bring up? Commissioner Vries Daniels, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I more of a question. So I saw that some of the businesses that Link 65 is going into are moving, and I'm wondering if we have any updates. I saw the Enchanted Rock Garden is moving, and Lynn 65 have announced that they are moving.
Thank you, Commissioner Reese Daniels. I do know that several have, and I don't know exactly what several means, have availed themselves of the EDA's displaced business grant. I know that several are moving within the community. I've heard rumors that I can't substantiate that Lynn 65 is going to remain in the community, so I hope that that's true. So that's all I can provide at this time.
Thank you. Chair Supple, you are muted.
Thank you. I was focused on seeing whether anybody had their hand raised. So is there anyone else that wanted to add any comments? All right, then we'll move on to the Executive Director's report.
Madam President, I do not have a report tonight.
All right, thank you. And next we'll move on to claims. I believe Commissioner Sandal is trying to move those.
I'm trying, thank you. So moved.
Second, Commissioner Regan-Gonzalez.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner Sandal and seconded by Commissioner Regan-Gonzalez to approve the claims. Any further discussion? All right, could we take the roll?
Yes, thank you. President Supple,
Aye.
Commissioner Onasorg,
Aye.
Commissioner Vries Daniels,
Aye.
Commissioner Regan-Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandal. We have 5 ayes. Thank you.
All right, well, we have reached the end of our business, and again, a warm welcome to Commissioner Onasorg. And excuse me, can you say your name for us to make sure we're saying it right?
Sure. Onasorg.
All right, well, welcome Commissioner Onasorg, and we're very happy to have you with us. Would you like to say anything else before we sign off on our last meeting?
Just that I'm very honored to be working with all this team here. It's fantastic to be here tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And again, a warm welcome. All right, well then, oh, Commissioner Sandel, go ahead.
Yes, I want to say thank you to this body for all your patience in waiting for me to get online. It was the 5th hour of Zoom I'd had today, and I'm zoomed out. I'm sorry, but thank you. And I'm looking forward to the cookies.
All right, any other words of wisdom or comments? All right, thank you all and have a good night. We stand adjourned.